that looks as professional as anything they do, and that's a way of getting it out there. But you have an ability to get things seen by others that we did not have. When I said that I did fanzines, and I printed them on what was called a ditto press, and unless you're a certain age, you have no idea what I'm talking about. The maximum print run was about 125 copies. Now you can be on the net, and you can be seen by as many people who find you in one way or another. So use that, find a way then to make a copy, get those out to the companies that demonstrate the type of work that you want published. If you're doing little kid comedy, you don't go to Marvel because they don't publish little kid comedy. If you want superheroes, you don't go to IDW perhaps. You know, I don't think they have any, or if they do, they have one or two. You have to connect the correct house with the correct material.
As to the why, I just say writing is if it's your compulsion, then that's what it has to be in the first place. At least on my level, I just encountered a lot of people where I don't think that their attitude or their heart is necessarily in the right place when it comes to comics. It's you know, maybe their eyes get bigger than their stomach, depending on where their place is, or they're looking at it as a means to something else. And you know, I mean, there's obviously that's a complicated issue, but I think that if you're asking why I write comics, is that you love this stuff and you can't. It kind of, you get into knots trying to think about, well, why do I like it so much? And if that's if you're doing what you enjoy, then it's already a beneficial situation to yourself. You're already pleased, and then from there you can find the ways to get the material out there. But it needs to have that, you know, I guess the tower has to be built on the right brick. And in terms of professionalism, I found that if editors I dealt with when I was making proposals appreciated if you can go up to somebody and actually make a cogent point or try to get across what the message you're trying to get to them about your book. They want, you know, if you can present yourself as somebody they can take seriously, that's in my experience has been a big step, because that's sort of part of the battle.
Yeah, you guys pretty much covered most of it. I was going to say, if you're writing for companies, obviously you're a team player. That helps. For editors, I know I get a lot of work because I'm easy to hire. I get what they're saying. I deliver this stuff on time. I try to do the best job I can. And I also don't cry if they have notes or any kind of things like that. What I do is I try to sit there and say, okay, that's not a bad idea, and I talk out things. I don't argue. I don't raise my voice. I only raise my voice. It's so rare it's not funny, but I try to, you know, try to understand that we're working, you know, it's other people's characters a lot, so they have expectations from you. And I would say as a general rule though, I do tell everybody, if you're going to write, you should go out and have a life first. You should go travel the world, fall in love. I know it sounds crazy, but you know, you can't just stay at home and write this one thing and talk about. You know, I wrote a book about Venice. I actually went to Venice and came back and wrote the book. And there's stuff in there that I would have never, just little things that would have never worked unless I was actually there. So a lot of times I tell people, you know, go out and live a little bit, because it'll help your writing. But I think the best thing is to take questions. I think you guys probably have specific things that you need answered, and we only have a little time. So let's move this mic around. So I'm going to move the mic around and come up to, or I'll just come to you. Raise your hand. I'll come to you.
I have a process question, just about thinking about the panels that you want. How do you determine, when you're passing a script to an artist, what the essential panels are?
The key moments, you mean?
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's that we're all movie directors in a way. We have to see what's going on, and you know, Frank Frazetta is an artist that always caught the perfect moment of the fight, when the arm's up and the blood's flying and everything. And if you the first thing is you have to understand the person's going to read the word balloon, and that little word balloon has an arrow that points down to the head. So you have to understand that there's a process that the reader has. So you have to get your point across. you break it up into panels. So if it's a movement where I'm sitting here and then I hear something, I look up and then I grab the mic, you know, it could be 2 or 3 panels, it could be 2, it could be 5, depending on the storytelling. If it's Brian Bendis, he tends to, you know, open it up, the moment. And again, this has everything to do with what kind of emotion or what kind of, you know, mood you're trying to set. But it's peak moments. And, you know, I don't think most people have the hardest time is fights, because if 3 or 4 people are fighting at the same time. Amanda deals with this. She gets a script and she goes, he wants me to do 40 things in one panel, and that's an experience, because as you get experience, you realize you're seeing it as you're writing. So you have to see it and describe it to the artist as best as you can. And it's the greatest part about being a writer is you get the artwork back and it's even better than you ever imagined it could be. But it's all about pacing. And again, if you have trouble with that, I'd say like a film school is great for that, because it'll teach you some storytelling.
Yeah,
Two other factors allied to that. Number one is it's the number of key moments, but it's through your style, your point of view, your approach to telling that story. Because just as in narrative fiction, you can have different points of view in relation to how the story is told. The style of the writer, chooses to approach the story is going to help determine which and what panels should be there. But the other thing that people make a mistake of quite often in terms of dealing with the comic book format is the physical format of pages laying out, reading left to right, the fact that you can only surprise a person on a left-hand page, and that they'll always see the art before they read the words. So you need to work in concert with what will be seen and perceived instantly versus what will be added to it. And if your character is saying anything, or if your caption is saying anything, it's already there in the art, leave it up.
Yeah. Think of a comic panel as a single snapshot, because that's what it is. It's not movement, it's not television, it's not even animated motion comics or anything like that. It's a single snapshot. And what you have to take the snapshot of is the most important moment of that scene, whatever it is. Go for the emotion, go for interesting way of telling your story. Don't approach your panels the straightforward way. An example being, I just finished a story the other day where I think it's 6 panels on the page, and I wanted to say that it was it starts at a gentleman's type club, goes upstairs and you realize there's a hidden computer room. And I could have done it any number of ways, and what I tried to do is I follow a butler as he's handing out drinks, and he's moving through. He's totally of no interest to it, but he got me to be able to show what each character what I wanted to show without hitting you over the head with the images. I came in with a different way of telling that particular story than just forward pictures. But think of them as snapshots. What Jimmy said is vitally important. You cannot put multiple actions for the most part unless you know who you're working with artistically. Some people can do it, some people can't. You have to think of what can actually be done. Do not have Green Arrow reaching for an arrow, knocking the arrow, the bow, and then firing all in one panel. Yes, it could be done, but maybe George Perez could do it, but not many others. So don't do that as one panel. Actually think what the artist has to draw. And remember, it's very simple for you to write in army attacks. It's not easy for the artist to draw that.
Or things like, for instance, if we were just rendering this comic book panel in a comic book, your establishing shot for showing that it's a panel could be a long shot showing a room with a bunch of people up at the front of it and microphones and the dais involved. It could be a close-up on the sign when you first come in the room that outlines the panel text information. It could be a close-up, an angle from down the side showing a couple of different microphones and people speaking to them or listening to the speakers as they're waiting for their turn. But you could have a panel with the guy at the end leaning back, texting something, bored and not listening to the rest of the people at the panel. All of those would serve to instantly get across the idea of where we are and what might be going on. But they have to do with your approach and point of view. What is important to you to get across to the audience and communicate to them well. And if you go back and look at a comic now, you can realize, you can start to pick out the elements in what the writer has chosen. And they're added to by what the artist chooses to add and embellish beyond that. But all those pieces work together for storytelling in a way that can cannot be broken down into an absolute format saying it must be done this way. There's just approaches that are more successful at communicating than others.
You know, a method I used when I first was trying to figure this out was this was before digital cameras, I just took snapshots of action figures and tried to tell stories with pictures, where I would try to put them all in order, and then I would write down what was happening in each picture into a script format. And it actually helped me because I can't draw. So it actually helped, but it was easier too because snap, snap, snap. Now digital camera is easier. But to just get an idea of how to tell a story visually, one snapshot at a time. And I immediately had to realize, like, I can't do 2 actions in a shot because that was the first mistake I made, and Lee Nordling used to smack me all the time over the phone. But call me up and go, Neo, you just wrote 2 actions in the same panel. What are you doing? So, so that's something you really have to learn. But I did use that snapshot method, and it was really useful. So.
I found a helpful analogy is to say that like comics is sort of like the poetry of visual storytelling. If say that a movie is the prose of it, in the same way that in a poem you say like you select 5 words that can convey what 50 words will say. You try to find like the most evocative visuals that can convey what 5 panels, you know, realistically could say, but then you can convey it in 1 image. That say if somebody's in front of a window that's smashed, you're probably going to infer that they smashed the window and walked through it.
Cool.
Questions?
Right here. Down front.
How do you find your market for it? I mean, like say if you're doing independent, and then you said that